Good morning, Tom.
Now, before we come on to the masks issue, I want to touch on something that we've been campaigning on at LBC for many years in our GEMS campaign, Guard Emergency Medical Services, which called for a change in the law to see that those emergency medical service users and workers can get greater protection from assault. You're going even further. Tell us what you're doing.
Yes, so today I'm announcing a consultation into doubling the maximum sentence for an assault on an emergency worker from 1 to 2 years. And by emergency workers, Tom, we mean police, prison officers, ambulance people and paramedics, everybody who's in public service who gives 24/7 in the front line, and particularly in a time of COVID, who've gone above and beyond and who've protected all of us in incredible ways.
So you're looking at potentially doubling the prison sentence for somebody that's convicted of that assault. Is this going to be for all kinds of medical professionals? I'm thinking GPs as well, perhaps. Are they going to be able to be on this list?
Yeah, so the list is defined in the Act of Parliament that was passed last year, and that includes health workers as well. So people who are working in the front line, who come into regular contact with the public. And the law was passed last year. The maximum then was 1 year. We've decided that in the light of the information we have, we want to now double that. And the reason for that is we want to give as much confidence as possible, not just to the public, but also to the workers themselves, that the law will intervene and pass appropriate sentences where they get abused, spat at, assaulted in a way that I think all of us find unacceptable.
And unfortunately, we are seeing more attacks on emergency service workers, particularly police officers. You talk about the information you've received. Is that you changing this because of an increase in these kinds of attacks?
Yeah, I so far about 9,000 offences have been prosecuted under the new offence. I think that we've got, looking at the existing law, so for example, with regard to police officers, we have an offence of assault with intent to resist arrest, which carries a maximum of 2 years. I think it makes sense for us in this particular provision to equalise the sentencing maximum to not just cover police officers, but other emergency workers as well. And it really fills a gap, I think, between the gap that exists with regard to very serious offending, where you've got grievous bodily harm, and what we call common assault, which of course normally would carry only a maximum of 6 months, which in many cases is an inadequate maximum to deal with the seriousness of the abuse that emergency workers often get.
We wait to see what that consultation brings back. Just coming on to this issue of masks, which has exercised a lot of people this morning. What is it that Scotland, Germany, Spain, Italy and Portugal have got wrong about this in making it mandatory?
Well, I think each government has got to look at the evidence and make its own mind up. We review the matter constantly. Where we are, I think, now is in a pretty good place. We quite rightly make masks, or coverings rather, mandatory
bit confusing,
on trains,
though, isn't it?
and well, no, I think there's a difference between a train or a bus where you might be sitting or standing next to somebody for a long period of time, maybe hours even, and a shop where people are much more transient. It's a mobile scene, people coming in and out regularly. I think, personally, I think the safe and sensible thing to do is, if you're in an enclosed space like a shop, is put a covering on. It will give other people confidence that the space is as safe as possible.
So you're
doing your bit as well by not inadvertently transmitting any disease.
Are you then one of the cabinet ministers who is apparently okay with the idea of it not being mandatory, rather than the cabinet ministers who want it to be mandatory? Which side of the split are you on?
I have a very open mind to this, and I look at the information very carefully.
Should the public have an open mind to it, though?
Well, I think the public do, and I think we should be trusting the public's great common sense. I mean, people every day are making judgments about this in order to adjust the way that they live and work. I think the
but if people make a judgment not to, sorry to push on this, but if people make a judgment not to wear a mask in a shop, they're making the wrong judgment.
Well, no, I think that it depends on the circumstance. No, I think people can be trusted. We've come this far as a result of huge common effort. It isn't just government edict, it's people doing instinctively the right thing. And I think as more and more people venture out into shops, and particularly I think of shielded people who will be able to come outside from August, I think it's up to the rest of us to do everything we can to give them the confidence that what they're doing is safe and sensible. And therefore, if that means wearing a mask in certain circumstances in enclosed spaces, then I think that's a sensible move.
Are we now? Is the government now encouraging people to return to work from today?
Increasingly, people are returning to work. What the government says is that, of course, it's up to employers themselves to issue guidance to specific workforces about what is a safe system of work. There's no doubt that people who can still work at home should carry on doing that. But there's no mystery about this, Tom. I mean, there are plenty of people who have been working very well from home. That can continue, but increasingly it's up to employers, people responsible for the systems of work in various workplaces, to set out what their requirements are. And we are seeing more and more people coming back into the workplace in a managed way.
Let me ask you just very finally on this about this common sense element. I noticed pictures of one of your cabinet colleagues, Home Secretary Priti Patel, who was wearing a mask outside but not wearing one inside, following the pictures of her and her meetings yesterday. That's not right, is it? You're meant to wear one inside and not one outside.
Well, I've only just heard about this morning. I haven't seen or spoken to Priti about this or the context with regard to wearing a mask.
It's important that cabinet ministers get this right, though, isn't it? If the public are going to be told very clearly what they need to do, that's going to be quite important.
Well, if you're near to a lot of people who you've never met before, in whatever environment, it makes sense to me to wear a covering. If you're in an outside space where social distancing can be maintained, then that seems to be sensible that you don't have to wear one. If you're going into a building that's busy, like a small shop or something like that, then put on a face covering. I don't think it's right of me to comment about individual circumstances or make judgments. All I know is what I'm trying to do is, I'm asking myself all the time, what's the right thing to do? What's the sensible thing to do?
And just while I've got you, on a slightly separate matter, we're expecting Huawei to be dropped from the UK 5G network once the NSC meets later on. I'm not going to ask you if that decision is going to happen because you'll tell me you're not in the NSC, which is absolutely fine. I wonder, though, whether this is going to be part of a broader review of Chinese state-backed business involvement in critical national infrastructure. For example, there's a new nuclear power plant to be built at Sizewell C, 20% of which will be owned by a Chinese state company. That can't be right.
Well, I think the way that we need to approach this is to look at each individual set of circumstances. There will be quite clearly examples where investment is entirely legitimate and sensible, and there will be instances where serious questions need to be asked and challenge needs to be made. That's our approach to China. That's our approach indeed to
But do you think you put incidents like that, Sizewell C, the nuclear power plant that's due to be built at Bradwell, whether it's the Chinese state investment into British Steel, is all that now back on the table as Huawei is?
Well, as I've just said, I think to take a sort of a generalist approach to this would be wrong. Clearly, when it comes to China, we have given them huge challenge as to what is happening in Hong Kong. We will continue to be robust and frank with China, where we think that they have overstepped the mark. But there will be instances where investment from Chinese investors, indeed from people across the world, will be appropriate. And therefore, I think that rushing to judgment in a blanket way would not be the best approach to this, what is a multi-layered issue.
And just in one word, before I let you go, because I realise we're running out of time, how would you characterise Britain's relationship with China right now?
Well, I would say that it's a relationship that, if it is to endure, has to be one that is honest. And I think we are providing honesty and frankness when it comes to important issues like Hong Kong. I think that degree of honesty will ensure a more sustainable relationship in the future.
Secretary of State, I'm grateful for your time, Rob.